listening to PopViews, views, reviews, and interviews. And now, here are your hosts, Ralph and Damien.
Hello world, welcome back to PopViews, and hello to the universe and to our alien overlords. Today we are going to be talking about the alien agenda and what that could possibly mean for the human race. But first, let's say hi to Ralph. Ralph, happy deal. I'm going to mess up this. I'm going to mess up the Spanish translation, but happy Dia de Muertos. Today is Wednesday, November 1st, and it is the Mexican Day of the Dead. And it kind of seems weird, Ralph, that somebody who is so into the zombie genre as I am would say Happy Day of the Dead. But anyway, Happy Day of the Dead to you, Ralph. How you doing?
Well, if you think about it, zombies are dead, so you're just saying Happy Zombie Day.
Right. There you go.
I'm doing okay. I'm enjoying the we went from cold yesterday, or last time I was talking to the broadcast about how cold it was, to now it's rainy out, and I'm in a short sleeve shirt again with no heat on.
Oh, there you go.
So, you tell me how weird the weather is here in Maine, okay? You guys will figure it out. As I talk about it all the time, you really think that this is one of those places where it's true. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, enjoy it while you can, man.
Yeah, because I know winter is coming.
Yeah, indeed. That's never so true as it is in Maine, you know. But,
so how is it over there in alien country, speaking of aliens?
Yeah, well, the aliens at Area 51 are warm. We're still in warm temperatures, you know, and again, we're dropping down, you know, in the evenings, you know. But you know, it's not. I wouldn't call it cold, you know. But
well, Vegas never gets cold. Well, it's just that when you're there for so long, 50 degrees is cold.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, we do drop down into 30s and even the 20s at times. But you know, it never gets cold like it does up in the north, you know. But
yeah, there's a big difference. I've noticed that you know, when it does get down to the 20s in Vegas, it's cold. Don't get me wrong. But 20 here is different because it's been cold for so long that everything is bone chilled. Everything is chilled all the way through.
Well, sure,
and frozen.
Because you've got that permafrost under all the snow, so it just keeps everything cold. You know, I mean, I experienced that, you know, in Minnesota, and yeah, it's a different kind of cold. And here in Vegas, you know, I remember in Minnesota going out and barbecuing in 20 degree weather, you know, I mean.
Right, because it wasn't too bad out that day.
Well, and I think you just kind of get used to it, you know, and so, but yeah, here, though, when it's 20 degrees, you know, the wind is always blowing here. I mean, at least a breeze is going, a good breeze is going. And so
we talked about that last episode, and it's how it's the same here, and that definitely makes a difference.
Yeah, well, you know, and that brings in the wind chill. So although it's 20 degrees out here, or 20 something degrees, it feels like it's 15. You know, and so yeah, it does get chilly here, but not cold like it does up in the north, definitely. And
well, I think I've acclimated pretty well here. I mean, I have, for those who don't know, I live in the middle of nowhere, Maine, but I came here from California.
Yeah.
So the people here are kind of shocked at my work that sometimes when I'm walking around with a short sleeve shirt and shorts on, and they still have on jeans and a jacket and a shirt.
It must have been
yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
It must have been quite a shock, though, going from California to Maine. My God, I mean, that's a.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Well, we were lucky. The first year we got here, well, I had already spent a winter in a bus, so that's a whole nother story. In Oregon the year before that, and a little tiny wood stove that I'd wake up and it'd be out all the time. Every 2 hours, I had to restock it. That's a whole different experience. But the first winter here in Maine, it was pretty mild. The first year we got here, it's like, okay, we're going to be nice to these people and give them a chance to, get used to snow. And then boom, the next winter we got hit bad.
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you, having lived in the North, my first experience of Minnesota when I first moved there, I moved there in a blizzard. I mean, we were in the middle of a blizzard when I arrived, and so that was my first experience with Minnesota, and it seems like that experience never ended for me. Every single year, I would think, I can't be here anymore, I can't do this anymore, but I stuck it out, I guess, for 13 years, and funny enough, when I left Minnesota, I drove out of Minnesota and I drove out during a blizzard, during whiteout conditions on the I-35. Getting out of Minnesota took almost an act of God, because it took me forever to get out of the state because there were whiteout conditions and I had to pull over and stop and pull over and stop and pull over. And so, it was hell to get out of there. It was almost like Minnesota says, you're not going anywhere, buddy. But I finally outran it. And I remember driving down the I-35 down toward Illinois, and I had one of those temperature gauges on my car, on my dashboard, and it was pretty, as I'm driving south, the temperature is rising and rising and rising. And when it got up to 40 degrees, I'm like, hell yes. I never have to look at that kind of crap again, and I haven't to this date. I will never live in those kind of conditions again. No.
You're making me jealous. Jim.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, I had enough of it. It was just, I was done.
I gotta say one more quick thing before we get back onto about the aliens, about the weather. I have to agree that the weather sucks. But what's really strange here is how different the weather, like I say, can change. There's been days here where there's been 100 degrees difference.
Oh yeah. I'll bet.
In a day, a 24-hour period. When it's gets sunny out, the sun here is hot because it's close.
Right.
And it's 50 degrees out. With the wind chill factor, it's 50. So that's pretty warm for the middle of winter. But then all of a sudden, by the end of the night, the sun goes down and the wind kicks up and it gets down to negative 50 with the wind chill.
Yeah. That's crazy.
That's a big difference.
Yeah. And that's, and you end up getting sick when that happens, because your body doesn't have time to adjust to the temperature, But, yeah. So anyway, Ralph, let's get into this today about the whole alien agenda. I think the first thing we should probably talk about is whether or not we are actually alone in the universe. And, it's estimated there are between 8 to 20 billion potentially habitable Earth-like worlds in our galaxy alone. And if you add in stars like red dwarfs and that kind of thing, the number of the potentially habitable planets rises to over 40 billion. And again, that number is just within our own galaxy. And if you think about it, there are over.
And who's to say what's habitable?
Well, what's habitable is what we consider habitable. I mean, there's a possibility that there are more habitable planets out there that are habitable to life forms that we can't understand because we've never encountered them. So what we're talking about here is habitable Earth-like planets, planets that have an atmosphere, and have breathable water and drinkable, breathable air and drinkable water. But then again, you're talking about over 40 billion planets just within our galaxy. But then you think about that there are about 100 billion galaxies within our own observable universe. So with that in mind, I don't really understand how anybody can have the sheer temerity to state that we are alone and that we are unique in the universe. I just don't, to me, that's unfathomable.
Yeah, I can't see how anybody could think that we're so special. Well, there is the whole God aspect where people say we are special because we are the planet God decided to do. There are people who think that way.
Sure.
But I mean, what is his name? Dr. Michio Kaku, I believe his name is. He says that we discover a Jupiter-sized planet every week.
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely.
So if you're thinking about how the world is expanding and that we're discovering all this and we can't see beyond, there are billions upon billions of odds that there is other intelligent life. We'd be stupid not to think that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and there are a lot of people out there who believe that although there may be other life forms out there, or rather there have been other life forms out there, that they believe, the galaxy was created all basically at the same time, and that life forms had all evolved on the same time period. And so therefore, other life forms in our galaxy, for instance, would not be any more advanced than we are. That in itself is kind of, I think that's a misdirection toward the knowledge that or toward the theory that aliens do exist and that they are superior to us in intelligence. And the reason for that is because I don't believe that all life form developed at the same rate. I think that we are a relatively young intelligent life form in our galaxy. Because it took hundreds of billions of years for life to start developing on Earth. And who's to say that it all happened at the same time? And a lot of people actually think that the other alien races may have existed and have now either killed themselves off or naturally died off because their sun has exploded or whatever. So I don't.
And I have to agree with you on that. I mean, who says that it's at the same rate? Maybe their planet was better conditions. Have you ever, if you even take it down to the simplest form of growing a rose, if a rose is in the wrong atmosphere, it doesn't grow as quickly and as nicely as it would if it's in the perfect atmosphere.
Well, that's you hit it right on the head right there. In fact, I like that analogy.
Thank you.
Because it makes sense. But here's the question. Given that we are not alone in the universe, if there are aliens out there, what would stop them from having created us? So what I'm talking about here, listeners, is I'm talking about intentional panspermia. Now, not natural panspermia, because, we found evidence of life from meteors that have landed on Earth. And we found microbial life on these meteors. And they think that some of the life on Earth may have come from that. And so, you're talking about rocks from other planets that have, made their way here. But what I'm talking about is intentional panspermia. I'm talking about aliens that may have come here, may have seen that there is life here, and may have mixed their own DNA with the currently developing life forms. So, I personally, I think I think this holds a lot of water. It would explain the missing link in our evolution theory, because here we go from we're an evolving ape, and then suddenly we're humanoid. And so there's a missing link there. There's something that's missing right there. So, it would explain why it is that suddenly we go from ape creatures to suddenly we're humanoids. It would explain that. Now, I'm not.
There's lots of things that could explain that also, though, to be honest. We don't understand nature at all. So how do we know how it all really works? We know the basics, but we're still discovering things that we have no idea. You used to think that the atom was the smallest thing that there was, and now we're finding out that we can't even figure out how small things really are. So there could have been something else that happened also, but it does make a good point. But what also makes the point is that there have been stuff all over since the beginning of time about aliens on things. So why not think that, yes, they put us here?
Well, right. And but going back to what you just said there, that there are a lot of possibilities, sure, but this is certainly one theory, and unfortunately it's a theory that people often poo-poo, because it has to do with aliens, and we have no existence or no evidence that aliens exist, and so therefore it's all witchcraft and magic, but I mean,
well, that would explain God too, if God was an alien.
Well, and that's exactly right. So let's get into that for a second. As you said, there is a lot of evidence out there that aliens have been visiting us for a long time. And what about the theory that aliens actually created us? And so if they created us, our primitive minds would immediately assume that they were our gods. And then we turned around and created religion around these things. And we started worshiping them. So knowing...
I'll tell you what, that I would have a lot easier time believing that than God or Buddha or the 5 other thousand deities that are worshipped on here. To me, that would make more sense than all these other deities.
Okay, well, let's back up about Buddha here, because Buddha is not a god. Buddha is what Jesus should have been. Buddha is the guy who we should, the person or the philosophy that we should attain. We should try to strive to be.
Okay, maybe that was a bad example.
Yeah. But so let's back away from Buddhism here, because I'm kind of defensive about that, because I think too many people mistake Buddhism for typical religion and that kind of thing, and he's certainly not a deity.
Right. I understand. Like I said, maybe that was a bad example, but you understand what I was saying. That there's so many gods worshipped and deities worshipped that it would make more sense that we were, for all we know, we're some kid's science experiment on a shelf somewhere.
Well, I mean, that very well could be. One of my favorite scenes was from Men in Black, that movie Men in Black, and when the guy opens up that locker and he's got this whole alien civilization and they're worshiping him as a god. Well,
right.
I mean, that in itself explains what I was just trying to say about how, we could have created the gods by way of the aliens that did at one time apparently work with this. And, but we're going to get more into that a little bit later when we start talking about how our government and the world government is probably working with the aliens. There's
that would explain. I say that would explain Horton Hears a Who.
Yeah, right. And actually, that's. I think that's what he was trying to say when he wrote that little story.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That would explain that story very well.
Yeah. But there was a guy. I don't remember his first name, but his last name was Drake, and he proposed an equation, and that was. It's called the Drake equation, and it proposed the idea that with the way that stars develop in the universe and in our galaxy, at that rate, what would be the fraction of habitable planets that could support life, and how many of them would support intelligent life? But speaking of intelligent life, Ralph, here's something else I want to touch on. Think about all the life forms on Earth. The plethora of life forms on Earth.
We discover more every day.
And we discover more every day. Now, again, that goes to show that not all life develops at the same rate. I mean, hell, the dinosaurs got killed off, 3 times before they finally died off? But here's the thing. Why is it that we are the only form of intelligent life on Earth that has been able to progress the way we have? Why is it that no other life form on Earth has developed the brain capacity, opposable thumbs, and what have you, in order to create their own little civilization?
One word: aliens.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. That we were the ones who were chosen by the aliens to blend their own DNA with, in order to create a civilization on Earth for their own purposes. And I think that I'm sorry.
To me, that would also explain too more of the diversity of why we have people of so many different colors. You know, they try to put it as, well, that's where they were. But originally, all the plates were together, and we were all in one place, and we all came from this one area. We know this for a fact.
Sure, right.
So why are there, you know, all these different nationalities and colors and different looks and everything? Never mind the culture. It's just our actual physical looks that we can go look at somebody and go, oh, they're Hispanic. Or, oh, they're French. Or, you know, why? How does that happen?
Well,
that explains it a lot more to me, that aliens were just doing different types of tests. And let's see which works the best.
Yeah, exactly. But using that word, which one works the best? I mean, I don't want to go there, because that leans more toward like culturalism or racism.
Right. I didn't mean it in a bad way.
Right.
That's the way a scientist would experiment. Right.
Yeah, I understand. But yeah, I wonder if the reason for it wasn't necessarily the best outcome. I think they knew what the outcome would be, but that they had to work with what they had on each continent. You know, so let's say, you know, we were all developing in the same fashion. Like I said, all the plates were together at one time, you know, and so we were all developing in the same fashion at the same rate, but then the continents started to drift apart. And so when the aliens infected the life forms that they had here with their own DNA, perhaps they were different species, but they eventually became one species. They all became humanoid. But because they were different species, maybe that provides an explanation as to maybe the different races.
It's an interesting thought. But then wouldn't there be more missing links and more evolutional lines?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's so much thought that can go into this whole idea of panspermia and intentional panspermia.
We could do a whole show just on that.
And oh, sure we could. But another thing is that if you think about it, it makes sense. Because honestly, if we had the technology to do this, I think we would. I think that's one of the reasons that we're looking for other habitable planets with developing life forms. I really think that that's why we're doing this, because I think we may be close to having the technology to do this. So I think it's entirely possible that if we do find a planet with developing life forms, that we could create our own little race there for whatever purposes we have.
I totally agree with you, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's already happened. One prime example I will say is Dolly the sheep.
Yeah. But then with that in mind, I wonder what the purposes, what our purpose would be to actually do this, you know. And my thought, obviously, because of the human condition and greed, I want to say it would probably be to make a slave race, you know.
Yep. Money. It's always the root of all of it.
Sure, and that's the idea here behind the thought that we were created by aliens and that we were created as slaves to them, possibly to mine resources at one time or what have you, you know. But so I don't know. Anyway, Ralph, let's take a quick break here. And listeners, when we come back, we're going to be talking about the probability of UFO and alien disclosures by our governments. You're listening to PopViews. Check us out at popviews.net. Hey listeners, this is Damian Gray with an important announcement about PopViews. Did you know that our podcasts are now on YouTube? We're still uploading our audio podcasts to platforms such as iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, and of course Spreaker.com. But now, each of our Wednesday wildcard shows have companion videos. Oftentimes, Ralph and I talk about pictures and videos that we'd really like you to see, and YouTube is the best way to do that. So, just go to youtube.com and search PopViews. Give us a few likes on our videos and subscribe to our page so you can be notified each time we upload a new video. And we are back. And we had done a previous episode about UFOs. I believe it was episode 4 of PopViews. Right off the bat, we talked about UFOs pretty much.
Surprise, surprise.
And so, I mean, I hate to call this, UFO episode, part 2. But I think that this is certainly an addendum to that, because we didn't really get into the whole idea of the alien agenda. We just basically talked about UFO sightings and that sort of thing.
Right, and as we talked before the show, there are so many different little sections that make up the whole alien world, from conspiracy theories, Men in Black. I mean, we can't do it all in one show, so it's nice that we're breaking it apart. Sure.
And in fact, listeners, we are going to be doing a show on the Men in Black, because I mean that's certainly a show in itself. Because there's
I hope we get Will Smith.
Yeah, that'd be great. Highly doubt that's going to happen, but would be fun. One of the things that we kind of touched upon in that previous episode, as well as I think a couple of other episodes we kind of touched upon it, was the probability of UFO and alien disclosure by our governments of the world.
If you saw that there were aliens there, would you tell us?
Yeah.
You would?
I would. Well, I think, look, what do we know? We know now we live in an ever-expanding universe. We know that there are billions of stars and planets literally out there, and the universe is getting bigger. We know from our fancy telescopes that just in the last 2 years, more than 20 planets have been identified outside our solar system that seem to be far enough away from their suns and dense enough that they might be able to support some form of life. So it makes it increasingly less likely that we're alone.
Oh, you're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens. And that he didn't find anything.
Well, I'm gonna do it again.
Yeah, why not?
Right? And there's a new name. It's unexplained aerial phenomenon.
Unexplained aerial phenomenon, really?
Yep, UAP. That's the latest nomenclature.
I like the old one. I like UFO. I don't know why.
Well, I think we can use them interchangeably, but I would like us to go into those files and hopefully make as much of that public as possible.
I can't reveal anything.
Oh, really? Because President Clinton said he did go right in and he did check and there was nothing.
Well, that's what we're instructed to say.
If suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe, we'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
How many species there might be that we've identified already? What the ships look like, the variety, from the small foo-foo fighters up to allegedly motherships mile wide.
I think, looking at the sorts of interesting reports in these files, the ones from police officers, pilots, military personnel, the ones tracked on radar, there's material there that certainly makes me think twice. It's not all misidentifications of aircraft lights and weather balloons.
Is there any one report that stands out as extraordinary or perhaps most convincing?
One in the new files that I particularly like is a radar sighting where an object travelled 10 nautical miles in 12 seconds, about 3,500 miles an hour. And that's on a military radar.
And they picked up their cameras and started over toward it, filming as they went. And when they got in fairly close to it, it lifted up, put the gear back in the wheel wells, tipped up, and took off at a great rate of speed. And so they came into my office and told me what had happened, and I sent them over to develop the film, and then had to go through all the proper regulations of reporting this, and we wound up having to send the film forward to Washington in the base jet airplane, and I don't know whether anyone's ever seen it since.
I have frequently been asked why a person of my background, a former chief of the defense staff, a former chairman of the NATO military committee, why I think there is a cover-up, or what the reasons may be for governments wishing to cover up the facts about UFOs. What I'd like to say is that there is a serious possibility that we are being visited and have been visited for many years by people from outer space, from other civilizations. That it behoves us, in case some of these people in the future or now should turn hostile, to find out who they are, where they come from, and what they want.
What I saw were lights. I saw three different things. I saw a glowing red eye-like ball that was dripping like molten metal that came toward us, that moved, it came into the forest, moved through the trees, missing the trees, obviously under control. The item moved back into the field and exploded and was gone. There were three objects to the north in the sky that had multicolored lights that moved in synchronization as though they were doing a grid search. We watched them for quite a while, and we saw two objects to the south. They were white, bright lights. We couldn't discern a shape. There was a shape, but I couldn't tell what it was. One came overhead at high speed, very high speed, 2,000 or 3,000 feet up, and sent down a laser-like beam at our feet. Just click, it was on. I stood there in awe, very concerned. Is it a weapon? Is it a warning? Is it communication? And as suddenly as it appeared, it disappeared.
The United Nations is getting ready for a contact with aliens from outer space. This is Moslin Othman. She's out of Malaysia. She will be planet Earth's first interstellar diplomat.
If aliens invaded, who would step up to lead us in that fight, and could we even win? That's just one of the questions the Discovery Channel's new series, Curiosity, looks at. Joining me now is physics professor Michio Kaku, who is a consultant for the series. Professor, welcome. The biggest question before we get any invasion is, do aliens even exist, and how would we know?
Well, the Kepler satellite currently orbiting in outer space has identified about 50 planets that seem very much Earth-like. In fact, every week we discover another Jupiter-sized planet in outer space. Now, to be sure, most of them probably have no more than microbial life, just germs. But a few of them may have intelligent life, perhaps even more advanced than what we have on Earth.
Just finishing up is the Vatican now, a 5-day conference on aliens.
And I'm kind of the opinion that it's kind of like the carrot leading the horse. I want to say they're kind of leading us by the nose with the hints that one day they will reveal what they know about UFOs, the secret information, that they supposedly have behind UFOs. But I want to say it's just to distract us in a way. But and I can't say that for sure. I don't know, but it's just a feeling that I have that it's kind of a bullshit misdirection for us, almost to keep us distracted and entertained. What do you think about that, Ralph?
I don't know about if it's just stuff like that, but they are there. I think that's a possibility too. But I think it's more of they want us to start getting used to the idea that it's a possibility, so that when they do disclose it, we're all not going to go, oh my God, it is real.
Yeah.
That we already kind of figured it was.
Yeah. If we indeed have these alien overlords and they are controlling our government, and therefore the government is controlling us, I don't know. I think the only time that alien disclosure is going to happen is when the aliens tell our governments, okay, now you can tell them about us, I mean, if that's the case.
But in ways, haven't they already done so? Well, I mean, like, what was that guy's name for the Department of Defense that we talked about on another show?
Well,
he basically said, yeah.
Well, yeah, but I wonder if he's people like him are just kind of rogues. He no longer works for the Department of Defense, so he's no longer under the authority of the government. And so because of that, people can easily discount him as being a kook.
Right, but I mean, there's been other people too, like the former president of Russia, the Republic of Kalmykia, I believe it is pronounced. He came out and said that it was true, that he's actually been inside a ship.
That he's actually been inside? Really?
Yes.
I haven't heard about that.
So, I mean, there are some people out there that say some of this stuff. Of course, like you said, some of them are just considered kooks. But, you know, several astronauts, one more person, Snowden.
Yeah, well, again, though, I mean, a lot of people consider Snowden a kook. You know, I mean, they certainly consider him a traitor, so they're not really going to listen to him. You know, I mean, there are people that do listen to him, that take him seriously. I'm one of them, actually. But I know a lot of people will discount anything this guy has to say simply because of, you know, the fact that they feel that he's a traitor to the United States.
Yeah, I understand that. But again, you know, nobody's going to believe, and everybody is not going to believe one person. There's no, until you see it for yourself, they're not going to believe.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
I mean, they can come out and show it on TV and go, oh yeah, look at who's visiting the White House, the new alien race.
Yeah.
People think it's fake.
You know, and Ralph, it brings up an interesting thought here. You know, we're all concerned, especially right now. Right now, we're really concerned about possible nuclear war with North Korea, and it just kind of makes me wonder if our governments are being controlled by the aliens, would they even allow a nuclear war to occur?
Why not? Why not? Well, it depends on their purpose. I mean, but why not?
I mean, I suppose if they wanted to decrease the population of the world, they would allow it. But it seems to me that, you know, they are controlling us for a reason. I think they want a slave race. You know, it's like I was talking about before, you know, intentional panspermia. The reason for that, the reason we would do it certainly is to create a slave race. I'm sure of it. And so with that in mind, why would you want your slave race killing each other off? You know what I mean? Unless it's to control the population, you know, and you know, that the population is getting out of hand, which I believe is certainly the case. But so, I mean, if that were the case, then yeah, I could see that. I could see where they would allow it.
Yeah, but you know, I think it's more of a control issue anyway. If they want it to happen, they'll have it, and if they don't want it to happen, they won't. I mean, look at how many things have happened where the nukes and stuff were shut down, and for several minutes everything was jammed, and they couldn't figure out why. The Air Force was having that problem several times, and there's been UFOs sighted at that time.
Right.
So who's saying that that's not them keeping the nuclear wars from being operative, just to show, hey, you know what? We got our control over this. So if we don't want you to have that nuclear war, we're not going to have it.
It's interesting how we have become so wholly dependent upon technology. And I wonder if that technology, I mean, and this is a theory that's out there, that our technology is actually alien technology that has been released to us. And a lot of people think, well, then they must be our great benefactors, you know, because of you know, they obviously want to help the human race. And I don't necessarily believe that that's true. I think that if they are releasing this kind of technology to us, it is only to further control us. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Over the years, we have become wholly dependent upon electricity, for example. And in relatively recent years, we have become dependent upon the internet. And I'm not talking about sharing cat memes, and I'm not talking about getting on Facebook daily and checking in with people. But that is certainly part of it because of our communication abilities now. I mean, the fact that the world's knowledge is at our fingertips, at our keyboards, and even on our phones anymore, is just, that in itself blows my mind. But imagine, Ralph, just for a moment, that if now I don't recall the name of this thing, but it's the ability to create a energy blast that would wipe out all power on Earth.
Oh, I've seen about those.
Yeah,
yes.
and honestly, I can't. It's an acronym, and I can't remember the acronym. But in any case, Imagine if that happened. Now, electricity alone would throw us back years. I mean, look at what happened in Puerto Rico recently with that hurricane that came through, and it wiped out their power grid. And
75% is still without power.
75% is still without power, and how are they able to survive this is beyond me. I mean, if my electricity suddenly went out here in Vegas, let's say everybody's power went out in Vegas here, there would be pandemonium here, honestly. But let's say we didn't lose electricity, but we just lost capability of internet access. Can you imagine what that would do to the world? We completely rely on internet technology for everything from communication to our economies. Our economies would be turned upside down within an instant. We would be thrown back to the days of the caveman, and the reason for that is because we don't know how to survive anymore without the luxury of these technologies like electricity and the internet. We don't know how to do this anymore. We honestly don't. Now, when I say we, I mean we as a collective. Obviously, there are a lot of people out there that are preppers and they're survivalists and that kind of thing, and they understand how to survive without all this stuff. But, the average person doesn't. You think about the average New Yorker walking around New York City. If suddenly their internet and their electricity had been taken away, again, using that word again, it would be absolute pandemonium. And within a day, we would be thrown back to the Stone Ages. So if you think about this, if the so-called alien overlords really wanted to announce their presence and do announce an invasion, that's all they'd have to do to us. Because what they could do is they could turn around and blame the human race for the problem, and they would come out smelling like roses.
It's so possible, but I mean, we actually already have that technology. I mean, North Korea has actually been threatening to use that on it, and it's called an EMP attack. Is what it's called.
Thank you. That's it. The EMP, yeah.
Right, and North Korea said it could use one of those and wipe out the whole country with one bomb.
Sure.
The whole United States. So that's a big threat, and I could see if we could do it. Of course, the aliens, if they can come all this way, they have the technology to do much more than that.
For sure. I mean, that would be the least of it. I think that they would be able to do. And
but I have to say one more example of what you were talking about before about how are aliens here to help us, or are they using us by giving us this power? And the best example I can give is one of my favorite Twilight episodes, To Serve Man.
Yeah.
They promised them the world and made their living in the country, the earth, a much more likable, livable place, and promised them the world when all they were doing was taking them up, and To Serve Man was a cookbook.
Right,
so
exactly.
In the long run, all the help they were doing was just to benefit themselves, i.e. greed, i.e., that's what could be happening.
Well, taking this on a more realistic basis, back in World War II, the Nazis had an elite squad of Jewish people, and they were called the Sonderkommando. And what they were, again, they were elite squad of Jews that the Nazis selected from others that were in concentration camps. And what they were used for is to control the concentration camp prisoners, and they were also used to kill off their own people. And they did this with the promise of power and survival by the Nazis. And the Nazis made it quite crystal clear that they would never be the superior race that they were, or what they considered themselves to be the superior race. But they did promise them to be able to survive among them and live among them if they were to do this. But then this Sonderkommando squad were quickly discarded once they finished serving their purpose, and they were thrown in with the rest of them in the gas chambers. So I think that that's exactly what's happening with our governments today, is that a lot of the governments are in league with the aliens insofar as they are promised certain things, and and that brings up the question, does this government know that they're being deceived? And I think that it's quite possible that they do. But because of the human condition and the greed factor, they don't care. It's all about me, and it's all about now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's a lot of also conspiracy theories that say the people in the political power and have all the power over the world are actually aliens themselves.
Some of them, yeah. I've heard that theory. I've even seen some videos out there of Hillary Clinton, and they have these slow motion clips where you can see her eyes changing to reptilian eyes, really, very suddenly. Correct. And I have to say that a lot of these videos look very doctored, but there are a couple that look relatively realistic. But so I don't know if I believe that so much. I love how some people think that if you believe in one conspiracy theory, you believe in them all. I don't think that's the case, especially not with me. I mean, I do believe aliens exist. I believe that they are using the human race as a slave race. I don't know that I believe that there are aliens among our powerful elite. There may be, but I think more than anything, even our powerful elite are being controlled by the aliens. So I don't know that that's the case.
I think it could be as possible as any other theory, and when it comes to some of this stuff. I mean, if their technology is that good, because we already have like invisibility cloaks and things like that are starting to come out.
Yeah.
Have you seen video on that stuff?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, who says that they can't actually cloak themselves to make them look like something else?
But developers already have one eye on tomorrow.
What's coming up down the road and very quickly is the Harry Potter cloak.
What is it? With that fictional cloak, Harry isn't just camouflaged, he's invisible.
My body's gone.
How invisible are we talking here? If I walked into a room with a soldier wearing one of these cloaks?
You wouldn't see him at all. He would be completely invisible to you.
This isn't make-believe. The military has seen the so-called quantum stealth technology. It works by bending the light around an object, even concealing most of a person's shadow. Imagine what that could do for a sniper hiding in a field, or the American pilots who ejected over Libya when their fighter jets crashed last year.
They could actually pull out, very similar to what they carry with a survival blanket, throw it over top of them, and unless you walked right into them, you wouldn't know that they were there.
So what was once firmly in the world of make-believe could quickly become quite real.
It's possible. That's all I'm saying. Is there's a possibility to so many things that it is possible that this could be happening also.
Sure. I think the possibility is there. Don't get me wrong. I do believe that the possibility is there. I wonder about the probability, though. And that's where I have to stop and go, what do I actually believe here? You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. But
I know it would explain Trump.
It actually, no. You may think that that's funny, and obviously in a way it is. But I think it could explain Trump. I think it could explain the fact that we are going back and forth. We went from George W. Bush. Well, let's go back even further. We went from Reagan and then George Bush Sr., who caused a war, to President Clinton, who kind of cleaned everything up. Then as soon as he's done, we get George W. Bush. He causes a shitstorm. And then we get Barack Obama, who, to his credit, stopped the war, and tried to make some positive domestic changes. And now who do we get? We get Trump to fuck it all up again. It's interesting how we're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth in the political spectrum. And this isn't just happening here in America. This is happening all over the world where they're going back and forth. And it kind of makes me wonder about the likelihood that it's two alien races battling for control.
Yeah, I'm playing devil's advocate to that. people would say that it's out there too.
I repeat, Ralph.
Like people like Obama.
Ralph, you are cutting out horribly. So please repeat what you just said there.
What I was saying is playing devil's advocate. You know, some people would say it was the opposite, that, you know, like Obama's made the mess and now, you know, cleaning it up and stuff like that. I don't agree with that, of course, you know that, but
yeah.
And in Trump's defense about being an alien, it's either, well, I don't know, it could be actually more proof. I don't know if you saw, but Trump's plane I think it was last weekend or the weekend before, was being followed by a UFO for a while.
Oh no, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, I saw something on that when I was researching this, and I forgot to click on the article, so I didn't find it again.
Oh, so
you just made me think of it.
Did you happen to? You said you didn't click on the article, but what was that about? I mean, did you get anything out of that?
Basically, that it was being followed for a while, and then whatever it was disappeared.
Huh? I wonder why
I don't know what it was.
I wonder why the Air Force didn't scramble around it or something.
I don't know. I like I said, it was one of those. I was in the middle of doing something else. I saw the article and meant to go back to it, and then totally forgot and didn't think about it again till right now.
No, I hadn't heard a thing about that. Listeners, if you've heard something about that, hey, send me an article on that. Send us a video if you've got video of it, you know, and let us know what you know about it. That'd be great. I kind of want to look into this. That's kind of an interesting thing. But you know, getting back to the idea that the government is being used in this way to control us, the other thought here is that they are eventually going to be discarded, and they are no longer going to control us. And the idea here is that the aliens are eventually going to use hybrids, you know, between themselves and human beings. To eventually control the human race. And we are going to talk about that in just a minute. But right now, Ralph, let's take a break. You're listening to PopViews. Check us out at popviews.net. Hey listeners, this is Damian Gray with an important announcement about PopViews. Did you know that our podcasts are now on YouTube? We're still uploading our audio podcasts to platforms such as iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, and of course Spreaker.com. But now, each of our Wednesday wildcard shows have companion videos. Oftentimes, Ralph and I talk about pictures and videos that we'd really like you to see, and YouTube is the best way to do that. So, just go to youtube.com and search PopViews. Give us a few likes on our videos and subscribe to our page so you can be notified each time we upload a new video. And we're back. So, Ralph, prior to the break, we were talking about, or I was talking about the idea that the aliens will eventually use hybrid beings to control us, and these hybrids will not have the empathy that humans tend to have toward each other. Now, I have to say that our empathy is quickly going away in our society all over the world. I see this especially here in America, but yeah, we know we're slowly losing our compassion for our fellow human being, and I think that that's part of that agenda. They want us to start losing compassion for each other, because as soon as we start losing compassion for each other, we will no longer work well with each other, and therefore will not be able to put up a resistance toward the alien invasion, as it were. And you can see this happening in America right now. There is so much diversity. We don't care about each other, and we don't care about each other's philosophies or each other's political viewpoints. Certainly. Our cultural differences, we don't give a damn about that anymore. I mean, you spend a day on Facebook and you can see how screwed up things are becoming. You know, it's worse now than I think it's ever been in the United States.
Yeah, and like you said, it continues just to get worse, it seems. And not to get political, I blame a lot of that on the politics.
Oh, sure it is. Yeah.
But even if politics is separating us, I don't understand. It's not even that we're losing any compassion for other people. We're going the complete opposite direction, and it's more towards hate. So, of course, I think that they're not even trying to get us to not like each other. They want us to separate and hate each other. They can control little sections much better and easier that way.
Right. And what better way to control the population than to have them at odds with each other? To have us at odds with each other. I mean, civil wars start because of this. And
Right.
a lot of people are going to die because of this if we go to a civil war. I mean, a ton of people, because the government's going to get involved with it. It's not going to be, the Southern conservatives against the Southern rebels against the Northern Yankees. It's not going to be as simple as that, because there's a lot of how should I put this? Let's take Florida for an example. Florida, there are a lot of conservatives in Florida, but there are also a lot of liberals in Florida. So it's not going to be a matter of a wide-span regional thing, the North against the South. It's going to be mass chaos everywhere, and it's going to be awfully bloody. And then the government's going to come in and they're going to try to control the situation. And that's going to make things even worse. It's going to be bloody. If we come down to a civil war, it's going to be bloody and millions of people are going to die. And I think, honestly, that is the eventual goal. They want to control the populace. They want to decrease the population, because it's easier to control a smaller group of people,
Right.
But you don't want them all gone, because then you lose your slave race. So,
well, there is theories out there that say that they've sent aliens, but not only are they working with them, there's theories out there that say that the government are allowing so many abductions per year, they're allowing so many disappearances, and that they are knowingly letting these aliens take us to experiment on us, to gain more knowledge of us, and they gain more knowledge of the aliens in that aspect too, and also of us, of how we work. And what they can use to control us even more.
Yeah, I've certainly heard that theory. And apparently the aliens struck an accord with was it Eisenhower, I believe?
Yes.
That they would be allowed to. I like that idea, that the aliens would be allowed to abduct us, like we'd have anything to say about it at all. Honestly, I think that their technology is far superior to us, and even if they did make a mass invasion, it's not as though we'd have anything to say about it. It would just happen, and we wouldn't have anything to. But I think what they want is they want us to willingly give over our free will.
They want to gain our trust.
Sure, and if you
that would be the only reason to do that is to come and say, oh yeah, well, let us take 100,000 people over the course of this many years, and okay, then, and we won't kill you. We just want to be friends with you. We're going to give you this technology and stuff, just also just to help out, and just let us experiment in it a little bit and let us see what you're really made of.
Yeah, but I think that I think they're just playing with us, to be honest with you. I think if they really wanted to just get rid of us, they would. But that's not what they want, because if you think about the smart tyrant will not go in there and just blow away his citizens. He doesn't want to do that. What the smart tyrant does is he remains relatively silent, and he slowly creeps into the consciousness of the citizens that he wants to control. And he will make promises, like you said, and certain things like that, and gain the trust of the populace. Now, that's a smart way to do it, because once he has them under his thumb like that, he's in total control. And they willingly give up any rights that they have. They willingly give up any freedoms that they have. Take, for example, look at what George W. Bush's administration did with the Patriot Act after 9/11. How many rights did we give up? How many freedoms did we give up because of the Patriot Act? Because they said it was for our own good. I think that falls right in line with this, Ralph.
I have to agree. But again, there are so many different theories out there. We can go on and on and on about it because each one of them have their plausibility. But all it comes down to, basically, like we said in the beginning, is that they want control for greed.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the only way they can get what they want is by totally controlling us. And this goes into the whole idea of the New World Order. And listeners, we're going to talk about that in a later show too, because that again. I mean, that's kind of like the alien agenda. It works hand in hand with that, and this is, I mean, as I was saying, the alien agenda spans over so many different theories, but so does the New World Order. There's just a shit ton of stuff out there about the New World Order. But, given that the New World Order exists and that it is a clandestine operation, once it's initiated, their solution is to place humanity under the leadership of these genetically engineered hybrids, which would be considered a master race among the humans. So the hybrids apparently surpass us in intellectual and psychic abilities, and they don't suffer from the so-called weakness of human nature, such as greed and empathy and compassion, and they have no need for individual freedom because they are part of the alien race, which is ultimately controlling us all. So I think that our governments are eventually going to be replaced by this alien hybrid race, and they are going to be the ones who end up controlling us. And here's an interesting thought, Ralph. We're seeing evidence already of them being integrated with us and us accepting them. Now, bear with me here, listeners. Let me give you an example. We are being culturally preconditioned to eventually accept the policy of interbreeding between humans and hybrids. The standards of physical beauty embodied in supermodels, for example, and actresses. It's increasingly moving toward emphasis on features of typical hybrids, like the low foreheads and small chins and triangular faces, big eyes, and the slim bodies. Now, it wasn't that long ago when the hybrid look on a person was considered disturbing and kind of, sickly. But today, right, it's become a trend. And the sexualization of these characteristics are becoming more and more popular. I mean, it wasn't, again, it wasn't that long ago. Think back to the days of, let's say, Marilyn Monroe and what was considered sexually attractive back then, as opposed to today, where you have small breasts, you have extremely small hips. Our human nature is such that what the males find attractive toward the females is almost instinctual, because what we're looking for actually is we're looking for a good breeding stock. So many males look for women with larger breasts. They look for women with the hourglass figure, with the wider hips, birthing hips, as they used to call them.
Childbirthing hips.
Yeah. and now all that's kind of being bred away from us, and we're starting to be told this is what's attractive now, not that.
So I have to agree with you on that, and you made a good point about the Marilyn Monroe, because a lot of people say that it was about 1940s, 45 or so that the aliens were actually here and started working with the government. There's been a lot of conspiracy theories for some reason about that time. But think about it. Marilyn Monroe was a sex symbol, but then who was a sex symbol not too long after that? Twiggy.
Twiggy, right. And that was back in like the late 60s. Yeah.
Right, like late 60s. Total turnaround there. And that's where it seems that the thin happened.
You broke up, Ralph. You broke up. Say that again.
And so that's where it seems that the big change in modeling happened, was right about that time.
Yeah.
And then being thin and tall and skinny was more appropriate than the full-bodied.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it makes you wonder what was happening back then, that they suddenly decided that was the new sexual achievement, sexuality. You know, that the thin and lithe look was more sexually appealing than say like Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield and that kind of thing. So
Correct.
yeah, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I find that very interesting, and I also find it interesting that the idea that youth is sexually appealing. You know, you see this all over the place. The sexuality of youth, and I'm not talking about teenagers necessarily. I'm talking about even younger than that. You see kids dressing in I'm not going to say they're inappropriately dressed, but
some of them are.
But it's more just it's kind of disgusting the way they're sexualizing children. And you see it all over the place now. Now, people want to combat the idea of child pornography, and I'm right there with them on the battlefield. That's a great idea. We should combat that. On the other hand, you've got media out there that are sexualizing children. Why do you think that that's happening, Ralph? I mean, why are we doing this?
I have no idea, but I would think that if pertaining to the agenda of aliens, it would be to breed earlier, to make more people, but then it goes against what we've talked about before.
Yeah.
This is one of those topics too that can go round and round in circles of how you're thinking, because one point makes sense to go with another point, but doesn't make sense with this point.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, so Ralph, we're getting into about an hour into the program, and so I think we should probably wrap it up right about here. And it would be a good idea anyway, because I believe that at about an hour into these podcasts, that's when the aliens start listening. So we should probably back away from it at this point, just for our own safety.
That's okay. I got my tinfoil hat on.
Do you? Okay. I do too. And so anyway, Ralph, thanks a lot for talking with me about this today. You know, listeners, again, we talk a lot about conspiracy theories. We talk a lot about cryptozoology, you know, Bigfoot, that kind of thing. In fact, next Wednesday, we're going to be talking about Bigfoot. And it should be a pretty interesting program. So definitely tune into that. But, you know, there are a lot of people out there that people who believe in conspiracy theories all wear tinfoil hats, and they're all nutbags and that kind of thing. And I'm here to tell you that Ralph and I, although we believe in conspiracy theories, we don't believe in them all. And we are certainly not nutbags. We don't actually wear tinfoil hats. I think in this day and age, when, as I said earlier, we have information at our fingertips at all times, it would be ludicrous not to look into these theories. You know, something I usually say at the end of the show is keep thinking and question everything. And the reason I say that is because that's exactly what I think people are not doing on a more continual basis. If you are more willing to open your mind to the possibility, to the what ifs out there, you know, and not be so stuck in your own dogmatic beliefs, whether those dogmatic beliefs, you know, are forced upon you by your religion or your political beliefs or whatever, open your mind to at least entertain the idea that what if certain things exist? What if these things exist? You know, I mean, I'm not saying that you have to believe any of this, but at least open your mind to that. So anyway, Ralph, if there's nothing else, let's go ahead and wrap it up for the day. What do you say?
I'd say that's a good idea. It's lunchtime here, and I'm hungry. And don't want the aliens listening. Who knows who is listening? And you know there always are.
Listeners, we will be back on Sunday, and we are going to be back to talking about the weird news of the world and the interesting times that we live in. Until then, as I say, keep thinking and question everything.